All right, picture this. Deep in the very center of your brain, kind of tucked right between the two hemispheres, there's this tiny little gland shaped like a pine cone. It's wild, because for centuries, this thing has been a source of just immense fascination. Some people see it as a biological machine, while others, they see it as a mystical gateway. So let's dive right in and unpack this.
You see, this tiny little organ has a serious dual identity. So what is it really? Is it just a master regulator of our daily rhythms? A biological clock just ticking away in the dark? Or is it something way more profound? The fabled third eye, the thing the philosopher René Descartes once called the principal seat of the soul. That's the huge question we're going to get into. So on one side, you've got science telling us, hey, it's a hormone producer, and it's absolutely essential for sleep. Simple enough. But then, on the other side, you have spiritual traditions seeing it as a literal gateway to higher consciousness. I mean, those are two very different stories for one very small gland, right? To really get the whole picture, we've got to look at both sides of the coin. Okay, so what is this thing, in simple terms? Well, anatomically speaking, the pineal gland is an endocrine gland. And its main job, the one that's been scientifically proven time and time again, is to produce and release a hormone called melatonin. Now, that might sound simple, but believe me, that one little function has a massive impact on our daily lives. All right, first up, let's unpack this scientific story. This is the tale of the pineal gland as the brain's master clock. Think of it as this incredibly precise biological timekeeper, and it's totally governed by the most powerful cue in our environment, light. And the way this works is it's fascinating. It all starts the second light hits the retina in your eye. Now that signal doesn't just help you see. No, it travels to this tiny region in the brain known as the SCN, which is basically the master pacemaker. From there, the message zips down the spinal cord and finally hits the pineal gland with a really simple command. Is there light? Okay, stop making melatonin. Is it dark? All right, time to get to work. And if you look at how this works, you'll see these rhythms align perfectly. It's amazing. As your melatonin levels peak in the middle of the night, your core body temperature drops to its lowest point, and your alertness just completely bottoms out. That's no coincidence. It's literally the pineal gland conducting this perfect symphony to get your entire body ready for rest. But here's the thing, melatonin is so much more than just a sleep inducer. It's actually a powerful time shifter for your body. It can literally reset your internal clock. So for example, if you take timed doses, you can shift your biological night forward or backward, which, by the way, is the secret to beating jet lag. This stuff is so powerful, it can even take an internal clock that's gone totally free running, like completely out of sync with a 24-hour day, and pull it right back into line. Okay, so we've covered the science. Now let's totally switch gears and dive into the spiritual story. Because beyond all the hormones and circadian rhythms, there's this narrative that's thousands of years old. The story of the pineal gland as a kind of spiritual antenna, the key to unlocking a completely different kind of sight. This idea was famously championed way back in the 17th century by the philosopher René Descartes. Now, he was absolutely fascinated by the pineal gland, and here's why. Unlike most parts of the brain that come in pairs, this thing was singular, and it was sitting right in the very center. So to him, that unique position made it the only logical meeting point between our physical body and our non-physical soul. And this concept, it runs super deep in a lot of traditions. In Hinduism, for instance, the pineal gland is seen as the physical counterpart to the Ajna chakra, which you probably know as the third eye. And this isn't an eye for seeing the world out there, but for seeing your inner world. It's considered the absolute center of your intuition. You know, that gut feeling or that sudden flash of insight that just seems to come out of nowhere.
Now, spiritual practitioners believe that when this center becomes active or when it awakens, certain signs start to pop up. We're talking about things like a major increase in those intuitive hits or having incredibly vivid, maybe even lucid dreams. Some people even report physical sensations like a pressure right between the eyebrows. Others talk about a heightened sense of awareness, more empathy, and just this deep, deep desire for meaning and purpose in their life.
So you have to ask, right? What could possibly be the biological source for such profound experiences? Well, one of the most intriguing and, definitely controversial theories comes from researchers like Dr. Rick Strassman. He's the one who proposed that the pineal gland might produce more than just melatonin. He thinks it could also create DMT, a super powerful psychedelic that's been nicknamed the spirit molecule. The idea is that it could be released during deep meditation or dreaming, creating those incredible visionary experiences. Okay, so we've got these two very different tales, the biological clock on one side and the spiritual gateway on the other. And the collision point, the place where these two narratives totally crash into a modern health debate, revolves around one single phenomenon: calcification. So it doesn't really matter if you see it as a hormone factory or the seed of the soul. There's a process that can mess with how it works. So the big question is, what happens when this tiny, soft gland starts to harden? Well, this hardening process is called pineal gland calcification, and it's exactly what it sounds like: a slow buildup of tiny calcium phosphate crystals inside the gland's tissue. Get this, these deposits are sometimes called corpora arenacea, which literally translates to brain sand. Kind of creepy, right? And listen, this isn't some rare condition that only affects older people. I mean, yeah, it does get more common as we age, but research has found that an estimated, and this is wild, 40% of Americans have some level of pineal calcification by the time they are just 17 years old. We're talking about teenagers here. Okay, so the most important question is, what does this calcification actually do? And on this point, the science is pretty clear. Researchers generally agree that as these little calcium deposits, that brain sand, build up, they can seriously mess with the gland's ability to produce melatonin. And that, of course, can throw that whole sleep-wake cycle we talked about earlier completely out of whack. And this leads us to a huge modern debate: what's causing it? One of the biggest controversies out there centers on fluoride. So on one side, you have serious concerns that fluoride is attracted to calcium and builds up in the pineal gland, with some studies even linking it to neurotoxic effects. But on the other side, you've got major health organizations like the ADA and WHO who support water fluoridation as a totally safe and effective way to prevent tooth decay. It's a really serious point of contention, and you'll find compelling arguments on both sides of the issue. So, okay, we've looked at the science, we've explored the spiritual side, and we've touched on the controversy. Let's bring it all home. Why does the story of this tiny, mysterious little gland actually matter to you? Well, it matters because its story touches on so many parts of our lives. It's about your quality of sleep, which is directly tied to that melatonin production. It's about your mental well-being. And that's true whether you see it through the scientific lens of mood regulation or the spiritual lens of intuition. It connects directly to your diet and your lifestyle because what you consume might actually be affecting its health. And it even scales all the way up to huge public health policies like water fluoridation that affect millions and millions of people. So in the end, what is the pineal gland? Is it a biological clock just precisely ticking away to the rhythm of light and dark? Or is it a spiritual compass meant to guide our inner world? You know, maybe the most fascinating answer is that it could be both. The story of this tiny gland is far from finished, and it really leaves you wondering, what other secrets are still hidden deep in the center of our minds?